Right, so without further ado, welcome to this session at 437 right now, A World of Impact, Successful Business Models across the Globe by Fiona Hazell. Fiona, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to already see some familiar faces from an earlier session. So thank you for joining us today. And to the new faces in the audience, I'd like to say a very warm welcome. My name is Fiona Hazell. I am the Program Director of SE Forum, Social Entrepreneurship Forum, which is an organization based in Stockholm, Sweden. My role within the organization is to run accelerator programs that will increase the impact of entrepreneurs across the world. My ambition is to make these programs the most impactful programs in the world. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that's going to work later. But first, I wanted to tell you where I'm from. So I've come here today from Sweden. How many of you have been to Sweden? There's a fair number. How many of you want to go to Sweden? Good. Well, let's see by the end of the day how you feel about that. Okay, for those of you who have been, what are some of the things you can tell us about Sweden? What do you associate with it? Yes, in the back. It's a peaceful country. Yeah? Okay, good. They recycle a lot. Yes, indeed. Swedes love separating plastics and glass and paper. It's a national pastime. Great. What else? ICA. How do you know ICA? That's amazing. Yes, what do you know about ICA? Oh, wow, that's amazing. Okay, so ICA is Swedish, and that's fantastic. I obviously haven't traveled enough around Malaysia. What other brands do you know? Swedish brands? Yeah, Volvo, exactly. It's quite amazing that there are so many innovations or so many things people know about a country that it's relatively quite small. The population is tiny. Yet there is a lot of impact happening. There are a lot of big things. And I moved to Sweden 3 years ago from South Africa. And when I was moving, I think I knew less than what you know in this room now. So when I was moving, somebody shared a video with me to introduce me to my new home country and my new home city. And I thought, seeing that the video is a very interesting video, that is very appropriate for the place that we're in today because it uses a magic trick. So, seeing as we are in magic, in honor of the hosts who brought me here today, I thought I would share it with you.
Stockholm is Europe's fastest growing city. A big study by PricewaterhouseCoopers recently compared 27 cities at the center of the world economy. For intellectual capital and innovation, Stockholm ranks number 1. We rank number 1 for entrepreneurial environment and number 1 for health, safety, and security. Moving to Stockholm is not a coincidence. The quality of life is exceptional. The longest arts exhibition in the world is inside the Stockholm subway system. Also, the natural beauty of Stockholm makes it a pleasure getting around by foot or bicycle. We have 760 kilometers of bike lanes in the city, which is built on 14 islands connected by 57 bridges. The city is made up of 1/3 parks and green spaces and another third waterways. The water out here by City Hall is actually clean enough to drink. I've had worse. Oh, reminds me, I need to recycle a couple of aces for the rest of this. In Sweden, we recycle 99% of household waste. and thinking green pays off. In an extensive 3-year study measuring air pollution in 25 European cities, Stockholm alone aced it and met WHO air quality guidelines. The average city had twice our air pollution, the worst one 4 times more. Compared to there, living in Stockholm adds almost 2 years to my life expectancy, just from breathing clean air. So, in 2010, Stockholm was elected European Green Capital, the first city to ever receive this honor. That is not a coincidence. Last year, we were the most internet-connected country in the world. Now, I'm sad to admit we have dropped, and we are now only the second most internet-connected country in the world. But still, for the 3rd year in a row, Sweden tops the EU Commission's list of innovation in the Union. Stockholm's GDP growth last year was 68% higher than the EU 27 average. Innovative market leaders like Skype and Spotify were founded in Stockholm. That is not a coincidence. It's a great place to work, but more than that, to live and love. Stockholm has 50% singles, but it's also ideal for starting a family, for all families. If you have kids, you get 480 days of paid parental leave. Babies have subsidized childcare, and growing up, schools and university costs nothing. And according to Global Age Watch, the quality of life for the elderly in Sweden is the highest in the world. Stockholm is Europe's fastest growing city. That's not a coincidence.
Okay, now why am I showing you that video? Not because I want you all to relocate to Stockholm, though I'd love you to come and visit. But what I want you to think about there are some really impressive statistics. It's quite interesting to hear some of the things, that there's 99% of household waste is recycled. They actually import trash from other countries so that they can burn it and use it for central heating for our homes. It really fascinated me when I moved there. And it feels like the system works like magic. But it's the work behind that that creates it. And that's what we want you to think about. Just like that magician spends hours perfecting his tricks, and just like Sweden has spent years collaborating with different industries to be able to offer the services that they do, the same is relevant for your business. And when a theme that I want you to take from this evening, if nothing else, is impact is not a coincidence. I've heard of social entrepreneurs who are thinking about making a difference and taking their current business model and then giving a portion of it to a charity. And that is a very good intention. It's a nice thing to do. But I challenge you that that is a little bit of an afterthought. There is more impact you can create by really being intentional at every stage of your business development. So I want to just take you on a journey today to see how we can make businesses more meaningful. Because at Social Entrepreneurship Forum, we've been running for the last 12 years now to create opportunities where social entrepreneurs can grow their businesses whilst changing the world for the better. I've worked with over 100 social entrepreneurs in my time. Here's some of them here, and in the audience, there's one in the corner right there. Nina has just actually returned from one of our leading accelerator programs, our flagship program in Stockholm. These entrepreneurs are running phenomenal businesses, and they've built financially sustainable models that increase impact, have a positive impact on society, while still generating revenue and being financially sustainable. What that means is that because they're not operating as a charity, they are not dependent on donations. it also means that because they are not just working with government organizations and looking for grants, if strategies change, their impact doesn't stop. By trying to create businesses that generate revenue, they are able to be independent, continuing to run their businesses and create the impact they want in the world, whether or not donors are supporting them or government strategy changes. And a lot of people think, oh, that can work for that kind of sector or in that country, but it wouldn't work for me. And I'm going to today demonstrate through sharing with you 5 different types of business models from different regions in the world, all of them with impact at their core. And so I'm going to start in Tanzania with Chris from EcoAct. This is Chris in our workshop, which I was hosting in Nairobi in Kenya in 2016. And the challenge that he is solving is the pollution created by plastic bottles. Plastic bottles are not recycled. They are just thrown in the bins or on the roadside and end up in the oceans. This is a problem across the world. But what he's done is he has created this, he has seen this as an opportunity. He is clearing the world of these bottles, processing them into what he calls plastic lumber. So if you see this picture in the top left, I believe I've got a little thing that does something. There we go. That is plastic lumber. It's a UVA processed PVC crusher thingy that actually turns it into a viable alternative to wood. And it can create products like like posts, fence posts, and like benches. That's made out of plastic lumber. What does that mean? It means we're taking a wasteful pollutant and transforming it into a value-adding product. And when we think about, it sounds like an interesting idea, we think that's quite inspirational, we have to go back to why. Who's seen Simon Sinek's talk on why? Who knows about that? There's a few of you. About that core reason why it's important to make this change. And if you haven't seen that YouTube video, I really recommend you do, because if you're thinking of making a difference, it's important to do something that really matters to you, because the journey is hard and you need that inner drive. So his why, Chris's why, was the environment. There are 10 million tons of plastic that ends up in our oceans every year, which is the equivalent of 700 billion plastic bottles. Just think about that for a moment. 700 billion plastic bottles a year. And also, in his beautiful country of Tanzania, the forests are losing 300 to 400,000 hectares of woodlands because people are using them for fence posts and for benches and many other things that could be replaced with this alternative to plastic lumber. I found this was a very novel and fantastic idea. I really was quite excited when I met Chris. And what I want to do is to explain to you that behind this great idea and vision is a business model, the same as any business model that any entrepreneur who is starting out will use. Is everyone familiar with the business model canvas? Yeah? Okay, good. So I'm going to jump ahead and just explain and unpack a little bit behind Chris's business model canvas, and then we're going to look at what we could potentially learn from his model for a business-to-business business. So his value proposition is about an environmentally friendly quality alternative to timber. Yeah? And his customer segments aren't that exciting. It's building material merchants, retailers, building contractors, and the municipalities who need to put up all of these fence posts around the place. His customer relationships are really just built on trust, that he's a supplier that can supply this quality product, and his channels are really just working with the merchants and direct business-to-business sales. But what becomes really interesting with him is his key partner is the waste collector. And in Tanzania, waste collectors are almost seen as scavengers, people just picking through the rubbish and taking things aside so that they can get some money for it. What he does is he formalizes that business for them. They turn into being accredited suppliers. They can employ people, they become employers. And so he has a pipeline, he needs all that plastic picked up, and that's not his core business. But he can support people who will do that, and he will pay them a fair price for it. When you think about his key activities, it's really about just processing it, manufacturing those bottles, and then turning them into this lumber. So the resources he needs are bottles, and the initial capital for the machinery to process. His cost structure is really about processing the transportation and the raw material, but the revenue structure is selling the UVA plastic lumber. And if you think about this business model, he only needs a couple of key clients to be able to make this business sustainable. As soon as you start fencing in an area, as soon as you start working on any of the many initiatives that he's now running, they run on a national scale. And what happens? All the plastic gets picked up, and Tanzania becomes cleaner. And what do I have to say about this? His impact is not a coincidence. And for a second, I want you to consider your business. If you have a business-to-business model that is a product, what should you consider when you think about Chris? From your value proposition, how could you contribute to a better world? And think about 3 different lenses you can look from. What are the environmental impact you can create? What are the economic differences? And what is the social change you could potentially create with your business, with the product that you're selling? With the resources, and I want you to just think about this for a minute, what abundance problem could you turn into a business opportunity? When you walk around and you see something that's frustrating you because there's too much of something and you wish it would go away, what can you do with that? How can you transform it into something of value? And because of that, you also need to be able to see what you need to do to add the value to that current resource. Also, like I touched on before, how can you create decent revenue generating opportunities for people in your supply chain? Each one of these adds to the credibility of his business. More people want to buy from him from a procurement perspective because of the great things he's doing. He has clients lining up to work with him, and he can't supply quick enough. He won't do any marketing. You go to his website, it's absolutely terrible. And I told him, you need to do something about it. He said, I don't want any more customers, just like, I need to work with what I've got. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal model he has. And also think about from a revenue structure perspective, it makes sense when you are, you're generating revenue whilst reducing waste. It makes economic sense as well. Okay. So from this perspective, think about this. If you have a product, there are definite things that you can consider in different parts of your model that could really fundamentally change your impact. Next, we're going to go to Vietnam, and I want to introduce you to Loan. Loan runs Bloom Micro Ventures, a really interesting initiative where she takes tourists to come and visit farms in rural parts of Hanoi. The idea behind it is the tourists get to experience authentic Vietnamese farming. They get to meet some people and actually work on the farm. They have a unique experience of the traditional Vietnam. But what they do is they work on the farm, and the person that they work with actually receives a microloan from the tourist. So the tourist is already paying $100 for their experience. That part of that money goes towards the host, and that host uses the money to buy inputs for crops or to buy chickens. So let me explain a little bit more, or let her explain a little bit more about their reason why they do this.
The amount of money that Western governments give as official development assistance to developing countries is around $100 billion every year. Despite this, a huge number of people continue to live on less than $1.25 a day. However, there is a massive untapped source of funding that could be harnessed for poverty alleviation. Every year, tourism generates about $300 billion in developing countries. That's 3 times the amount of official development assistance. So, if we could harness just 1% of this amount more effectively for development, we could help millions of people escape from poverty. But how can we make tourism help more people? How can tourists traveling in the developing world leave the people, places, and communities they visit better off? We are Bloom Microventures, a non-profit social enterprise. We use our guests' tour fees to finance low-interest microloans for the local people our guests have met during their tour. We offer our guests a unique off-the-beaten-path experience. During our day trips, guests explore local authentic culture. They learn about and engage in rural livelihood activities with the local people they interact with. But most importantly, the guests make a life-changing difference. Our guests' tour fees directly fund a low-interest microloan to the local people they meet during their tour. Lack of access to credit is one of the root causes of poverty. A tiny microloan starting at just $100 can help the people we meet during our tours kickstart their path out of poverty. With so much tourism in developing countries and still such great need in the world, why shouldn't tourists visiting any developing country have the chance to authentically explore, learn, and make a difference? It would help millions of people around the world.
Yeah, another great example, and this time a business-to-consumer model. So instead of having one large business or 2 large business clients, thinking about how you can offer a service to many consumers. And the value proposition, as you heard on that video, is a life-changing travel experience, both for the tourist and for the farmer. The customer segments you see are conscientious international tourists looking for an authentic experience. And what we've done here is we've broken it down to also say there are beneficiaries, which are the female micro-entrepreneurs in Hanoi. The customer relationships are actually about a deep-rooted bond. People who experience this, when you meet the person that you're going to change, you know they're going to buy chickens that's going to support their family. It's a powerful bond that continues. And so that means that people are always on social media saying, look at the family I stayed with, look at what they've bought with the money, look at how it's growing. And often what happens in this story is the money is then reinvested. So when the chickens are sold, then they go on to buying goats and pigs, and a whole farm is created. And each tourist follows that story, and they feel a part of that journey. Also, travel agents are really important because they need to be able to show this unique experience to their potential travelers. So the key partners, you need the local community to host, and you need the travel agents to promote this kind of service. And the interesting thing here is the key activities. Yes, Bloom Microventures do tours, but their main business and revenue-generating activity is the microloans. They have key resources, which is the money that the tourists pay, and then the key resource, which is the local farms that already exist. Their main overhead is the cost structure, is the travel logistics, getting people to and from the places. And the revenue structure is the international premium pricing that people are prepared to pay to travel. People are going to pay a few $100s to come and stay, and they will pay that for the hotel, but you're offering them a unique experience, and they'll happily give that money to you. At the same time, there is an interest on the loan that Bloom Microventures get back on a monthly basis, a small amount, from each and every farmer. And again, impact is not a coincidence. It is in the middle of this business model. It's in every single aspect of it. And if we think about what we could do, if we had a business to consumer service model, how could we create a powerful experience that will be retold for many people for many years? And how could we appeal to the conscientious consumer? What could you do for your business to show the difference that you are creating, to help them feel part of that story? And what under-supported sector could you serve? Oh, there we go. What existing resources could you leverage? And how could you use an international pricing model? Think about those tourists and the amount they will pay and the exchange rates. How can you take advantage of that and really consider these are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities? People will only really travel to that place once, maybe twice. Maybe they'll do it personally next time and not through your company. So what you need to do is make sure there's a recurring revenue, and that's what they get from the loans. Okay, you ready for another one? Okay, now we're moving to Uganda, and we've moved too far. Let's see if we can go back. Okay, now we're moving to Uganda, and this is Richard Mbale of Banner Pads, and that's him in Uganda, in a place called Mpiji, where I went to go and visit him. What he's holding there are the threads of banana leaf fibers. Bananas grow abundantly in his region. One of the challenges they have in that region is there isn't much else but bananas in that space. There are young girls in that community who don't have access to proper sanitary pads. Even if they could go to town to find some, they wouldn't be able to afford them. So he looked at this and said, what could he do with the abundant resources around him? And he got some experts in, and they figured out they could process the parts of the leaves and turn them into a type of pulp that turns into a hygienic sanitary pad that's affordable for young girls in that region, made from a renewable resource of the bananas that are growing around the area. On top of that, he then works with the young girls to be the ambassadors and distributors who live in the different towns and villages in the area, who then sell the products on a commission basis and generate their own revenue on a monthly basis. So why is this important? For him, 1 in 10 menstruating girls skip school or drop out due to not being able to attend school for one week a month. And also, there are many young girls who are not going to have economic opportunities, but they could be female entrepreneurs. And so if we look at his model, he has affordable, easily accessible sanitary products for an underserved market. There are customer segments of women and girls of menstruating age in rural Ugandan communities, and the relationship is of a big sister, because the girl is selling to the girl, the older sister who knows about this product. And the channels are the revenue-generating opportunities for the young female ambassadors. He partners with nurses, clinics, and schools, also as distributors, but also to create education activities for hygiene. He then uses this education for those young female ambassadors, because then they can educate as they continue to distribute, making a healthier society. His cost structures are really quite low. He again had the high working capital input cost when he had to get the processing plant, which he actually got after a grant of being in our program. So we were able to find him someone who could fund that initial capital investment, and then he was able to go forward from there. And his revenue structure, it's a monthly product. So he gets monthly repeat purchases. And something that he discovered when I saw him last time was he then wanted to see how to use the byproduct. So the soap, like when when you squeeze out all the oil from the leaves, there's a byproduct that could be turned into soap, another hygiene product that can go with the pads, a natural product extension. Again, impact is not a coincidence. Are you getting where I'm going here? I'm hoping that this is going to be burned into your minds by the end of the night. If you want to have a B2C product, then consider, could your customer and beneficiary be the same person? Because a lot of people separate that out. And if it could be the same person, how do you make your product more affordable and more accessible? That is the key. If you have a product at the moment that is premium, think about what you can strip out and how you can distribute it to make it affordable and accessible to new markets. Also, what subject matter experts or organizations could support you to build credibility and also to grow your knowledge and your experience and expertise and enhance the impact that you can create. And what educational support could you offer? And what abundant resources, like I mentioned, if you see banana leaves around, what can you do with them to solve a local challenge? And with a cost structure, something that I've seen many very innovative entrepreneurs do is to find renewable inputs that they can get for free. There's another woman in Uganda, Betty, who needed the husks of a particular nut that are very popular to eat in Ugandan culture. And so she set up a factory right next to the place where they do the shelling of the nuts, because they don't use them for anything, and then she just takes them away for them. And so that is how she creates her inputs. So think about that. What do you need, and how can you make it easy for people who are discarding it to get it to you? And then the revenue structure again. How could you encourage repeat purchases, and how can you generate revenue from the byproduct, like the soap? What could you do with whatever you have that is waste that's left? Turn it into something of value. Never throw anything away. Be like a Swede. Okay, now we're moving to India, and this is Safe City. Elsa de Silva created a crowd-sourced map that looks at incidences of harassment and sexual harassment of women in public places in India. And I'm going to show you a video there which explains why she did this.
We met in Sweden 2 years ago, and we were working on a different project, and at that time the Delhi incident happened, the Delhi rape incident, which we heard about the world over. And we said that something like Safe City is what is required for the country.
Safe City is a platform that documents personal experiences of sexual harassment and abuse in public spaces. And this is then collated on a map and visually represented as hotspots.
We've had around 4,000 reports come in from 50 cities, and we have workshops conducted for around 1,200 people on sensitization on gender-based issues.
As a woman, street harassment is quite a common issue. You face it on a daily basis, but we are conditioned to accept it as part of our daily routine and to deal with it and not talk about it. And here we are trying to change that. We use open source technology, and Google Maps is the essence of Safe City because all our data is visually represented on it.
And we also use Google Forms for feedback, sourcing volunteers, and for conducting surveys across the country as well.
I know that our idea is working because at a workshop that I did, a 9-year-old came up to me and said that she could now go back home and talk to her mother about her experience, because she now knew she had not done anything wrong. When I see that the work that I do helps people express themselves and confront or even stand up for themselves, I think that's a job well done.
Okay, there we go. My hope is that maybe next year I can bring these entrepreneurs so they can tell the stories themselves, but at the moment this is all I can do. So, yeah, they're very inspirational people in person. And if we look at the Safe City Business to Government service, which sounds like a slightly different sort of model. Their value proposition is to ensure young women and girls do not live in fear and have the freedom to fulfill their potential. They work with municipalities, police departments, and corporates. And the way they do this is they provide that data to them to say, we now know that there are incidents in this area. There are handbags getting snatched the whole time. There are women that are reporting some kind of inappropriate behavior on a certain bus route. Okay? And then what can happen is the police can mobilize. They can go to that area, they can be in that hotspot, and they can understand, and what often is the case, is there's a broken street light. And if the light is fixed, people don't lurk there anymore. So the municipalities now know to keep track of these certain areas that are high risk for women. So rather than stopping women from walking that way, what we're trying to do is create the ability for them to walk wherever they want and for a safer city. Then also with corporates, you heard them mention that they work on gender sensitivity. So often in workplace culture, there are times where there is just gender inequality. And so what they try to do is to sensitize people on what is appropriate behavior in the workplace between men and women. Then there's customer relationships, is very much focused on a trustworthy partner striving for a safer and more equal society. And one of Elsa's strengths is her ability to give amazing keynote talks. She is also a Vital Voices Fellow. She has done stuff with Sherry Blair Foundation. She's got her profile picture at the moment is with Hillary Clinton. Like, she is now championing women's rights across the world. And I'll get to that in a minute with her partner network. And then she also has managed to mobilize a lot of volunteers who want to work with this organization and have set up their own little hubs and voluntarily ensure that women feel safe to be able to report such incidents in their areas. The other thing is working with women's rights organizations globally. There's one strong thing that they're all working towards. And also, it's good to know where the incidents are happening, but it's also important to know that if you're a victim, where to go. Now, that is not Safe Cities' responsibility. It's not their core business because they understand the crowd mapping. But what they do is they partner with an organization which has help centers in different areas. So if you are reporting something, then you can actually, they can tell you where your closest help center is. And then they've used Google and Twitter a lot. The social media is their main form of communication that they have with people in their community. And Google and Twitter have been big supporters of trying to get them access to whatever new innovations they have to see how they can use that to enhance the impact that they have. Their key activities are all about data gathering and auditing of hotspots. So when they realize that there's a certain area where there's a lot of incidents being reported in that area, they then go out there and they often take journalists with them as well. So that if the municipality is not doing anything about it, as soon as a journalist is disgusted by it, it suddenly gets fixed. And then their resources are actually people and volunteers. A lot of this stuff is run just because of the power of what they're doing. The cost structure is mainly about the platform, but like I said, a lot of those costs are covered by their technology partners anyway. And the revenue structure is quite interesting. So they have these corporate trainings that they do because they want to change the workplace environment too. And people pay for that workplace training. It's actually become part of legislation in India now that you need to fulfill some of these requirements on sexual harassment with the new. With the responsibilities and regulations. And so they are the chosen provider to run those gender sensitization workshops. Data insights, when they collect all this information, it's interesting to many different people who will pay for that. They have lots of sponsors who want to get behind such an important initiative. And what Elsa does is wins a lot of awards. So she is constantly able to develop, to put that into research and development, because along with the prestige of being with these big mentors like Sherry Blair and Hillary Clinton, is that they also give you dollars to be able to develop your and continue to spread your impact. So it's an interesting model and quite mixed. Again, her impact is not a coincidence. I have one last model. So just to quickly go through the government online service, think about how would you change a cultural norm to create a new reality, and how could you support the government in their goals? You know what their agenda is. What could you potentially do? How do you build the credibility to be the trusted expert? What do you need to do in that space? And how can you leverage your expertise to attract the partners and customers you need to make that difference? Also, what organizations could complement your offering, like I mentioned earlier, with the safe houses and the victim support centers. And how to generate revenue from your non-core activities. Now, the last example I want to share with you is Deftronics. And I'm just worried with the timing that I might not be able to show this video, but I think it's really important I do. I might need to ask for a couple of minutes of your time afterwards and patience, just because I want to round this off.
There's an African proverb which says, the sun does not forget a village because it is too small. There are 200 million people with a hearing impairment in Africa. It's my dream that by using the sun, we can begin to solve this problem. My name is Tendegai Katsiga. I'm not a scientist or an engineer, but I saw a problem and wanted to solve it. The technology we have developed is simple, but the application is changing lives. So they're outside, they're being charged. These are the solar-powered hearing aids.
Pandakapuwa hearing aids, nda even makulelefe kunyashonzwa zvakanaka. Kusida mjigeripo nderekuti mabhatiri anopera shaka kana.
In Zimbabwe, it costs $4 a month to power a hearing aid. If it's a choice between bread and batteries, the choice is simple. Children with hearing impairments represent one of the most marginalized groups in society. My dream is that people determine their own destiny. These young people, just like Tapio, are going to be the innovators of tomorrow. I have no doubt.
Impressive product. So his value proposition is to ensure that solar-powered hearing aids provide an opportunity for hearing-impaired Africans to participate in mainstream education and employment. And he is serving the military and NGOs and schools for the hearing-impaired as a trustworthy supplier. What's really interesting, though, is his key resources. He trains the hearing-impaired to become the engineers that manufacture the hearing aids for other hearing-impaired people. And the cost structure is only components. And he has a revenue structure of direct sales contracts to those big NGOs. And also does some monthly subscription models as well for institutions, for deaf schools who want the solar chargers. So as you know, I'm saying impact is not a coincidence. You should always look for an opportunity to build a more inclusive society, see how you can manufacture and assemble locally, and if you can charge using a value-priced model. So his current model is actually really a lot cheaper than what hearing aids supported by NGOs are normally costing. And so he can actually produce for much less and charge much more. So think about that. So these are the entrepreneurs from very different regions working in different sectors. And so I'm trying to demonstrate to you that if you can think innovatively, there is an opportunity for you too to be able to make that difference. But now, just in summary, me being here is also not a coincidence. I am here because of you. You are the ones who can lead the change. You have the ability to shape the impact your business has on the world. And so I want to hear what you are up to. And if you believe your business can create this kind of impact, then come to visit Sweden. I want to hear about what you're doing. There is my email address, I'm giving it to you here. I want to hear the innovations and the way that the entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia want to make a difference. And if we can do that, I will speak to our hosts, and maybe we can make magic happen. So, yeah.
Hello. All right. Thank you so much, Fiona. Because like running out of time, apologies upfront. We cannot do the Q&A session, but yes, feel free to talk to Fiona after the session and everything. You'll stick around, right, Fiona?
Yes.
Yep. All right. So another round of applause for Fiona. That was an amazing presentation.
Thank you. Sorry, just one thing I do remember. I do have mentoring sessions after here for the commitments for that, but I'm not quite sure what time that starts. So I will be here as long as I can, but you also do have my email address, and you will see me on around. So please do come talk to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Fiona.